Hello everybody, Andy here, and today I'm going to be diving in on some essential tips for new players in Bit Heroes. So whether you're just starting out or looking to optimize your gear, there's going to be some great tips for you in here. Starting off with the question, what are the different types of main hands in Bit Heroes? So in Bit Heroes, your main hand is arguably one of the most impactful pieces of gear, and like all gear, it directly impacts your stats, but also it will directly impact the skills that you have available. And before all the eggheads hit me in the comments, yes, I know other equipment can give you abilities. Weapons are for sure the main source. There are some main archetypes of weapons that you can find in the game. There's swords, axes, staves, bows or crossbows, laser cannons, and of course if you're not using a weapon at all, you will be using your fists. Now each different weapon will have its own stats, whether it's high in power, health, or agility. But really, besides the stats, the main difference between weapon types is their skills. Now do note that I'm just going to be talking about legendary rarity and below. As you encounter like set equipment, mythic equipment, and even ancient weapons way later in the game, they will have their own unique skills. And one other thing to know is that as the rarity goes up, you'll unlock more skills in that archetype, but each weapon in an archetype below legendary rarity, at or below legendary rarity, will have these same skills. So let's go over these. So starting off with swords, they have a 0 SP that hits closest enemy, and not to spoil the fun, but every weapon will have a 0 SP that hits the closest enemy. You can hit the closest 3 enemies or deal damage to the target enemy for 1 SP. They have a deal damage to all enemies for 2 SP, and a drain health from closest for 3 SP. Generally speaking, the swords are best used by DPS players. They do have that 3 SP drain that could keep you alive if you're a tank, but I would generally recommend this for DPS. Axes can drain from all enemies and hit the closest enemy for 1 SP. They have a target enemy for 2 SP and a spread heal for 3. Axes is my favorite for tanks. You know, if you're on the front taking a lot of hits and you need that health, you can simply use that 1 SP drain all enemies. And you know, if you're facing 4 enemies, that's going to drain from 4 enemies. That's really, really useful. Definitely, I think, best for tanks, but still certainly viable for DPS. And you could even argue, with that spread heal, a support player or healer could use this. Now spears, sort of similar to swords, basically just damaging abilities here. They can hit the furthest or closest 3 enemies for 1 SP, deal damage to target enemy for 2, and closest enemy for a big hit. You know, that's 287% of the player's power there for 3 SP. Spears are definitely very similar to swords. I prefer the spear a little bit over the sword just because of that damage furthest enemy hits a little harder than the sword's abilities, but it is definitely another option for DPS players. Moving on to bows and or crossbows here. They have a damage target enemy or damage all enemies for 1 SP. They have a damage furthest enemy for 2 SP and a drain health from all enemies for 3 SP. Now, since this can hit the target, all enemies, furthest enemy, and even drain from all enemies, the bow is actually very, very flexible. Whether you're trying to like snipe one enemy with that target or chip away at the whole team, and if you're in a bad situation, you know, low on health, that 3 SP could be super clutch draining from all enemies. I think bows are best for DPS players. You could argue with that 3 SP drain. That is a decent pick for tanks as well. I would definitely recommend this one for DPS though. Next up, we're going to talk about staves. Staves will have the damage weakest enemy or heal target teammate for 1 SP. They've got a 2 SP damage all enemies and a 3 SP damage target enemy. Now I actually love damage weakest enemy because it's the enemy that's dealing the most damage is usually the weakest or has the lowest HP. So it's a good way to snipe them out. But really because of the 1 SP heal, I would say that staves are probably the best option for support or healer players. But DPS players can definitely use it effectively too. I mean, like I said, the weakest enemy attack is really, really nice and convenient. Damage to all enemies is really, really nice. And target enemy for a big 225% hit if you need it. Moving on to laser cannons. Laser cannons are not on the wiki, so I had to grab this one myself here. I'm rocking the electron launcher. But just pulling up the skills here. Now note that this one does electric damage. That is unique to this laser cannon. But It's going to have a target enemy or hit closest enemy for 1 SP. And for 2 SP, there's 2 options. Either damage random enemy 3 times or spread shield your teammates. Now, this is super unique. Until now, we have not seen any of the damage randoms. So damaging random is usually one of the strongest skills because you can't really guide it to where you want it to hit, but it hits for numbers, you know what I'm saying? And that they can give shield to your team. I think this is definitely a good option for DPS players, but with that spread shield, you could argue it's a good option for support/healers as well. And then last and unfortunately least is if you use no weapons, aka you're just using your fist. You only get the one skill called one bid punch that just deals damage to the closest enemy. And sadly, the one bid punch is also extremely weak, only hitting for about 25% of your power. When should or shouldn't a new player upgrade their gear? So just pulling up the upgrade menu here, I've got a random piece of equipment. Honestly, the decision is up to you. It can be nice to be beefed up, getting those bonus stats and just sort of smash through flags and dungeons and all the enemies and whatnot. However, upgrading takes gold, takes materials, and epic materials are kind of hard to come across. I know I've got thousands, but I used to struggle. So these are very valuable resources, especially for newer players. You definitely don't want to be wasting these when you could have beat a challenge or a flag without the upgrade. So I would recommend only upgrading when you start losing and it feels like the fight is unwinnable. You know, if you lost and the boss had like 1% health, just try again and try again. You will get it. You know, you just might need a godlike RNG run. But if you are absolutely stuck on a flag or a dungeon, go ahead and upgrade your gear. I mean, whether it means literally clicking this upgrade button and upgrading it, or maybe, you know, you had a tier 11 weapon and now you want to go up tiers. I guess the closest thing I can show is a tier 17. But whether you're literally upgrading or just getting new, better, higher tier equipment, those are definitely ways to boost your stats and gain the edge. As a general rule of thumb, especially early in like tiers 1 through 8, I would say, I would heavily recommend you try to beat the flags using only epic equipment, since epic equipment is relatively easy to find and it is much cheaper to upgrade than legendary and above. If you can get by with basically cheap upgraded gear, definitely try to run just epics as long as you can. Once you hit, you know, tier 9, tier 10 and double digits and beyond, you'll definitely need to start eyeing up some legendary equipment or set equipment, if not going on to grabbing, you know, mythics or ancients. But at the end of the day, upgrades are literally straight up bonus stats for your character. Also, your familiars stats are based off of your player stats, so upgrading your stats will actually upgrade your familiars as well. So you definitely want to upgrade your equipment if it helps you beat flags, or even just helps you be as competitive as possible in PvP or another game mode. Also, please do not upgrade old tier equipment unless you plan on upgrading it to your current tier for a specific build. You know, I would never recommend bringing old legendaries up in tiers. Leave old legendaries behind. Set pieces, I struggle to ever recommend up tiering unless you have a very specific build in mind. It's generally a best practice to leave old legendaries and old set pieces behind in their old tier and find new ones in your current tier. It will be so much cheaper than bringing old ones into your current tier. So when should a new player melt their gear? Honestly, one of the easiest ways for me to show this is in the smithy. On the melting page, just look at my filters. If you click filter, come to advanced. These are things you can always melt. No harm, no regrets. As for like the totally standard equipment here, legendary and below in rarity, it is super safe to just melt those. You will get a lot of the common, rare, and epic materials that you need, and legendary materials if you got legendaries. That is all super helpful. I do want to call out one super important tip. If you do have accessories, pets, or mythics to melt, I've got an entire video going over some advanced melting strategies that I've left a link to in the description that you really need to watch before melting. Watch that video and understand the benefits to those melting strategies, again, for accessories, pets, and mythics. But really, just to sum it up, when should a player melt their gear? If you don't ever plan on using it again, just melt it. You know, worst case scenario is you melted a set piece that you were about to use, like, oh crap, okay, now I might need to do now I might need to just grind it out again. And hey, if you grinded it out one time, you can grind it out again, baby. Now, right next to melting in the smithy is reforging, and the question comes up, what is reforging? Reforging is a process that allows you to change the stats of your gear, allowing you to basically switch what stats that piece is giving you. So right now this necklace is high in power, but looking at my build, you know, maybe I want more speed on my build, which I do. So I can come in here, reforge, and then I can look at the options here. I could either move that power into health, I can move that power into speed, or I can split it evenly between the three for this specific piece. So I can simply choose to spend a little bit of epic material, go ahead and reforge it, and it is the exact same piece, gives me the same exact set benefits there, but now I just have a little higher speed. Now also, reforging is a little bit different for pets. Specifically, pets are very important that you reforge them to be beneficial to you. There's 4 options for pets, and that is going to be, here you can see it will trigger when you get hit. This one will trigger when you hit an enemy. The one I'm wearing is, it will trigger per turn. And then the last option is either per turn when you get hit and when you hit an enemy. So it's all of them combined. If you are a DPS, I would highly recommend going for the when you hit an enemy. If you're a tank, I would highly recommend going for when you get hit. If you're a support player, I would definitely recommend going for per turn. And realistically, I would very rarely recommend going for the split of all of them. You can see, you know, this one has a 38% chance when you hit an enemy versus this one only has a 19% chance when all those triggers go off. So definitely make sure you guys are reforging your pets. When should a new player consider reforging? Generally, you definitely want to reforge your pet to get it to be the right trigger, but really only reforge your equipment if you need to balance your stats. If you're a DPS, make sure you reforge so that you have high power and speed. You do want to make sure you have around 20% of your stats in health though, so you aren't just absolutely fragile. If you're a tank, make sure you have high power and health. And feel free to do like near 0 speed. You really want high health to survive as a tank, and you really want high power so that your pet actually has a bigger impact. And as a support or a healer, very similar to DPS players, you want high power and speed. So to sum up, understanding the types of main hands, knowing when to upgrade, melt, or reforge your gear, and making efficient use of your resources are key to mastering bit heroes. I will say, never be afraid to experiment with different gear setups, different stat outlays, whatever. You know, find what works best for your hero. At the end of the day, if you have wasted some materials, you can always grind for those materials again. You know, you can definitely get anything back in this game. So if you make a mistake, it's just temporary, and you'll be able to recoup any losses. That's going to be all for this one. Thank you all so much for tuning in and watching until this point in the video. If you found this video helpful, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing Bit Heroes content. I want to take a quick moment to thank all of my current channel members. Thank you all so much for supporting me. And also want to give a shout out to my current stream boss, B. Thank you for supporting on my live streams. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, take care and good luck with your grind.